I'm just making a guess.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I got it. But I really think that they probably have that in common.
Absolutely. Boca and Orange County really love their tolls and their toll toll roads. And yeah, it's pretty similar. So now that we got Boca in the conversation,
Finally.
welcome, Nicole Georges, to QDS Stories. I'm your host, Moon, pronouns she, her. And Nicole, I'm so excited that you're here because I am a little obsessed with your podcast, Relative Fiction. And I want everyone to know about it. So everyone in my family has already been assigned to listen, and they all really love it too. So,
thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
oh my God, it's amazing. So my wife and my sister-in-law are over at my sister-in-law's place right now, like, oh my God, because now they've all heard your story, and they also just wanted me to say hello. They're really excited that you're here too. And they have my dog, Teddy, who would normally be here right here. But
Teddy, well, say hi to everyone for me, including Teddy.
I will. And please say hi to Ponyo because, big fan.
Oh, I will. She's upstairs. She's usually with me, but my spouse is making dinner and she has to be underfoot.
I understand. It's really important that they know in case anything drops,
Yeah,
right there.
She's blind and she's always underfoot.
Aw, yeah.
So it's a little bit like you're like dancing around her because she'll be like right at the back of your, and she can't see when you're stepping backwards.
Yeah. So it's like,
yeah.
Yeah, I know. Well, Teddy can see and he still is like that. So I feel like it's just a dog obligation. They're just like, they have to do this. So right away, you host two of my favorite podcasts, Sagittarian Matters and Relative Fiction. Do people ever say to you, because sometimes people said this to me, like, what is it with you and astrology? Like, are you like in a cult, or like, do you know people that are not, I mean, I'm really into astrology.
Yeah.
So do you ever get that from people?
I mean, only a little bit. And then, the people who say it, I'm just like, well, so it's obvious you're a Virgo. I've met people before. They're like, oh, I believe in astrology. I'm like, well, so you're obviously a Virgo. And they were like, oh, because they were a Virgo.
Right.
One time I met a writer who I really admire now at a writing conference, and we were having a drink at the hotel where everything was being held. And I mentioned astrology, and they were a queer person. And they looked at me like I was like such a fool. How could, and I just was like, come on, man, you're steeping in it. Like, I feel like it takes more to be in queer culture and be anti-astrology than it does to just go with the flow. Maybe you don't identify with it. Maybe you think it's hocus pocus, but just let people say the thing. It doesn't take anything away from you to have people be like, oh, I don't, maybe it does. Maybe,
yeah.
But I like astrology. I don't know anybody I don't think there's anyone who's close to me who's like violently opposed to astrology.
I have someone who's like a sister to me who's an Aquarius. And so if they listen to this, they're going to be like, well, who every time I would stay with them in New York, at some point I would be like, oh, well, because I'm a Gemini. And they would be like, oh God, I'm like, I'm so interested in your chart because like,
they must have Virgo in their chart. Well, it's saying like, okay, I'm just trying to use a shorthand so you understand these personality traits I'm talking about.
Right.
How about that?
Yeah. It's like Myers-Briggs.
Yeah.
Which I totally also really love. So maybe because I'm a Gemini and I'm an ENFP. I don't know. Probably.
I can't remember what mine is anymore, but it was very on.
Yeah.
I'm also Year of the Monkey.
Okay.
I have a friend that has a store called Psychic Sister in Portland, and she was trying to explain astrology. I think some kind of man was like, whoa. So she was like, if you can believe that like my body is somehow impacted by the moon and the cycles of the moon, is it such a stretch to believe that my body could be impacted by other planets? The other planets could have something to say about my moods or me.
Exactly. By the way, what's your moon in?
Capricorn. It's all Capricorn.
Oh, so you're Sagittarius sun and everything else is Capricorn.
Yeah. My
Ah,
whole chart is like on the left side and it's like,
damn.
Mhm.
That's impressive. I'm a Sag moon.
Oh,
So yeah, like whatever. And also I don't know the rest because I'm adopted. So that was kind of like part of the part of the package of like being adopted in 1977 was like, well, we're not going to tell you a lot about your life. So just make it up.
it's too bad there wasn't some kind of hippie influence in the adoption kind of
Right.
network where they're like, upon this child's 18th birthday, give them their natal chart.
Like a soothsayer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, come on. It was the 70s. Like they couldn't have come up with something. Yeah. I don't know. But I'm always fascinated to know what people, yeah, what their, relationship to the stars is. I don't know. But so I guess if do does that make you like uncomfortable if people are like, well, because of your work and your artwork and writing and all those fabulous things, it kind of makes you like a cult hero, like, you know, like a queer cult hero. Like today I use the words queer icon because I really like putting those words together in social media because we need it. We need it so much in our community. So is it okay to call you a cult hero or
Sure.
you
I
comfortable with
mean,
it?
I I think that's okay. I mean, I don't, living day to day, like uh trying to jog in my neighborhood and getting like 3 minutes in and getting winded. I don't feel like a hero, but I'll take it. If my work can help anybody, I'm very happy to know that.
Yeah,
And I'm happy for every kind of queer icon that I can find or grab onto.
absolutely. And there's a lot of them actually. The more I dig, the more that's like, well, because queer is such a huge umbrella. It doesn't mean like, necessarily who you have sex with. It just means, your alternative outsider lifestyle. Um, and I do think that relative fiction has the potential to really help people because I know for me, one of the reasons I was absorbed into your story was because kind of the essential part of the story is like your grief and like how you're working through it. And but like with humor and compassion and awareness, which I think um is so needed, especially right now, especially are we in post-pandemic? Are we still in pandemic? Whatever it is that we're in now. People really need to hear more stories like yours, because I think everybody's got them. Um, but the way that you tell it, with a lot of reflection, it's really powerful.
Thank you.
Of course. I mean, to be that vulnerable, right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's not worth it. It's not worth doing if you're not going to be vulnerable. Like if you're going to have
Yeah.
a memoir and you're going to be self-conscious the whole time, it does not really sounds like a memoir I want to read.
Right.
Those
True.
aren't the point. The connection points for me in any writing are the vulnerable parts.
Yeah.
That's the thing that forms a bridge between listeners or readers and the person doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, do you think, because actually I'm writing a memoir,
Hmm.
and it's about how I became a deathbed wife because my first wife, which makes me sound like, I'm a lot older than I am, but actually died.
Oh,
And so today would have been our sixth wedding anniversary. We got secretly married in Miami. I almost said Miami, but speaking of Boca, that's where the parents are. Um, but I'm writing it because it's also a little bit about my chaotic family history. And I sort of mentioned that, I think, in one of my emails to you early on. But how do you do you have advice for people? Like, how do you maintain this sort of like truth to your story, but also like peacefulness within your own, like your family of origin? Do you get asked that a lot? Like, are people like,
I mean, people always want to know, like, what does your mom think of your book?
right?
And I don't, I mean, the thing is that I mean, there's two parts of it. And one part is like your family life, and one part is just your own peacefulness as you're doing your thing. And I mean, the family part, it just is what it is. Just you're a writer, your family maybe is not going to love that. And that's okay. That's your job. And also, as a writer, it's not like I'm there to tell my emotional truth. I'm not there because I mean, as much as I was raised to believe that keeping my mom's secrets was the way that I was a good family member, that's not actually true. Like now that I'm an adult, I get to have agency and just say like, Mom, I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm just telling the truth. And maybe there's things that, people regret that happened, but they happened. And whoever they happen to has a right to say them. I was just listening to a book by Dani Shapiro, who has a podcast called Family Secrets. She's so wonderful. I think the book's called Still Writing, but she was talking about kind of how if you don't tell the truth, it diminishes you. If there's something inside of you you need to say, and you're a writer, you just need to say it. And you're not doing it to hurt anybody. And you're not doing it to, do like an expose on your family. You're doing it because there's something you need to get out of you or understand in a different way or move through. And so, the grief element in relative fiction and in my graphic memoirs is just, I'm trying to just tell these stories just because I want to tell the story, but the drawing of it and the writing of it takes so long that it's like moving. It's, when people say move through the grief and people are like, how, what does that mean? Does that mean like setting a timer and having a feeling 5 minutes a day or going to therapy or groups or what? For me, it's all that stuff. Plus like just sitting down and drawing sometimes the worst or saddest moments of my life. And they just have to like draft them and redraft them and ink them. And it takes a long time. And then at the end of it, there is some kind of release. It's not gone. There's some things you'll never stop being sad about, but it's moved it to a different place.
Right.
For me.
Well, do you think that do you think that being queer, for example, do you find that having chosen family or community makes it a little more cushiony? Like I kind of remember from your story, you don't really live close by to your family either, right? So you have some space and you're in Portland and then other places too. But, do you find that helps like make it a little less like when people live in the same town or like, yeah, right. Like, but also just having that community, having people around you that are like, yeah, tell your story. We've got you,
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, queer people have, and I say queer people as opposed to gay people, because there's like gay people that are pretty normcore. Maybe they have a different experience I do, but as a strong identified queer person, I really believe in this idea of like queer failure, queer families. Like we don't hit the benchmarks of heteronormative success of like, I'm an adult because I'm doing all these capitalist measures of success. I bought a car, I have a house, I have a baby, I got married. Like we're not doing those things to be like, I'm a success. We're just trying to find our own way. And we're sometimes just like building in the dark. We each get to build our own path. There's not a lot of path set for us. I mean, the whole generation of men died of AIDS. A whole generation of like gay boomers died who could have given us more paths. And so we just get to make our own path. And so part of my path was just through my art and through volunteering, meeting people who I consider my family, who, I really stopped responding to my family of origin or relying on them at a pretty young age, pretty much as soon as I started going to therapy. Somebody was like, that's not normal. The thing that you think is normal in the way you grew up is not actually the way everybody else grew up. And I was like, what? What do you mean? Keeping the secret of that your father was alive your whole life was not normal. And I was like, whoa, having a teddy bear named after your stepdad is not normal. But yeah, so I just have always through recovery communities, through volunteer communities, the literary communities, comics communities, I've found my people who I'm, what is the word I'm looking for? The people who I answer to.
Right.
I don't answer to my family. I don't answer to my mom. I love my sisters, but like I answer to my community. I'm held accountable by my community. And those are the people who I want to answer to.
Yeah. There was that part in your podcast where you were trying to prevent your mom, from seeing the newspaper or to see, yeah. Um, and, it's funny. And it's also like, I think that builds that kind of like, well, I wonder how our mom's going to feel after the fact, of course. But I definitely think that one of the things I really like that you talk about with Dr. Laura, particularly, is, her staunch attitude about what a parent should be like and how that like appealed to you because that's not what you were getting. It's not, it's what you needed and that's what you weren't getting. But I think it's so funny because she's not a feminist or a radical right role model. But do you think that like so I have a 23-year-old now. And so when I was like a young queer single mom trying to figure a lot of shit out, dealing with like, mental illness that comes from living in a chaotic family system and being kind of poor and not supported, a lot of my choices were really limited. And, I try to like be as open with my son as I can be now because he's 23. But do you think that like, do you find yourself like having more like understanding about your mom's situation or like why she made certain choices or
I mean, I think a thing which is not my place or the podcast place is just her mental situation. And I think whatever happened to her, however her brain has, built itself around whatever happened to her as a kid, it's just different from, the experience of like the people Dr. Laura is talking to that are like, I just think that she has different survival skills.
yeah.
She has different defenses. She has a different sort of personality and triggers and responses to anger and all kinds of stuff. And that was really hard to navigate. And so and I can see like going through the podcast, by the end of the podcast, I feel like, it's a shame that she, as of yet, the invitation's still open, but that she, as of yet, has not wanted to be part of the podcast. Because I feel like in some way she's getting corroborators. Like there are, when we actually talk to the other people, when we like just open the secret of this man that she tried to pretend like was dead and asked other people about him, there were other people that were like, he wasn't an awesome guy.
Right.
You're lucky you didn't know this guy. And I think that kind of corroborates her story. But since she can't, and so that gives me more empathy for her and her situation and why, and potentially what she could have been keeping from me or couldn't say or whatever.
Yeah.
I still think, I still like when I read things and people are like, yeah, parents, they're in charge of like, taking their kids to the doctor, making sure they go to school. And I'm like, she didn't take me to the doctor, make me go to school or make me brush my teeth or, anything. So, in those ways, I still, especially as my friends have kids and I see how much thought and care goes into every single element of that. And then I think about this kind of like 80s sort of laissez-faire, like they'll live like that kind, like the kind of like they'll figure it out versus this, the like very conscious queer parenting or even this like people growing up and being honest with their kids and saying like, hey, here's what happened, like making amends with their kid, like apologizing to their kids for things or talking to them or reflecting back. Here's the experience. Here's what was happening. Instead of just being like, why are you saying the truth? I hate you for saying the truth. It's just such a different experience. So I actually, in those ways, I don't like gain more empathy. I gain a little bit more like reflection on how hard it was for all of us.
Yeah.
Because it was all minimized along the way.
Right.
and it's still minimized. It's still like, you guys can't take a joke like about anything.
It comes through so much, like through your sister, that the sister that I forget your sister's name, but
Oh, and the podcast, her name's Meg.
Meg. Thank you. Yeah, it's just I think just having grown up in a chaotic family and then sort of like also replicating that in my 20s, I do have so much compassion for you and your family. And I think that's really what's important, is like the big takeaway is like, you're just telling your truth. And you're right. It's not your responsibility to try and figure out like what's going on with your mom. And it's a little bit disappointing that she can't face it, because it's like, we really want, as the audience, to hear that from her. Like, yeah, this is what was going on at that time. But I also kind of pick up on that, like, you do forgive her in a sense that's like, you've made peace for yourself. And that's, hard. I think that's like the hard work. And a lot of your artwork is kind of like telling that story. Your drawings that you share on Instagram, particularly, or Twitter, like, I really love those because they synthesize like, this like grief work, or, self-love or whatever, like, which is, I'm wondering if like, is that the medicine for your grief, or is your grief the impetus for the art? Or is it both? Which is totally, there's no wrong answer.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I started doing, I feel like I stumbled into everything I'm doing out of necessity, but in another way, it couldn't have happened any other way. I can't imagine my life without it. Like, I got a book deal to do Calling Dr. Laura. Like, I was just a dumb 20 something. By the way, I cannot imagine having kids in my 20s.
Right?
I can't, I look back with great remorse on how I raised my dog from my 20s.
Aww.
Like, if I knew then what I knew now, I would do everything differently. And I just didn't. I just couldn't know then what I know now. And I just was as old as I was, and my life was as chaotic as it was. And I just have like remorse. And I wish that my dog could grow up to be like human age. So, I could be like, Beja.
Right.
Beja, you're a 25-year-old dog woman. And I just want
Aw.
to say, I'm sorry. I didn't know about positive reinforcement training when I had you, or, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, in my 20s, I was just clomping around on Sister Spit with Michelle T, just telling people like, isn't it funny that I called Dr. Laura? And isn't it crazy that a palm reader revealed this secret? And I took a literary agent, kind of hot on the heels of Fun Home, to be like, what's going on with your family? That's weird that your mom didn't tell you about your dad. What else? Why didn't you go to your mom? Why didn't you find your dad? And I was like, oh, I don't know. And I feel like I, in some ways, stumbled into all of this. But I can't imagine where I'd be at without it. So I didn't like set out. I knew that it would be a big deal to write a graphic novel, because it would take years, and I wanted to be about something that was worth years. And this
Right.
felt like it was worth years. So I made the choice towards that. But I felt like, at the time, if somebody would have said, do you want to do an encyclopedia of dog breeds? I would have been like, okay, and done that instead. So, but doing that, it really, I talked to Jessica Lanyadoo before the psychic, before I signed the book contract, because it felt like I was signing a deal with the devil, almost literally, because my mom is so anti the truth of this secret. And Jessica was like, it will take you somewhere you need to go with your family, whether that's good or bad, it's where you need to go. And it's true. And it's kind of it's a mitzvah. It took me somewhere I needed to go.
I love that.
Anonymous Fuzzball, the animal drawings. I mean, my mom drove me to go to 12. My mom drove me to 12 step for, groups for people who grew up with, wild ass families or wild ass situations.
Right.
Like,
I I love
And
it.
I was driven to go there after when Calling Dr. Laura came out. It was like I had broken up with somebody. My dog Beja had died, who I had had for since I was 16, and I just like, oh, and then I was getting harassed by my mom and my stepdad about the book. Like they were threatening me and leaving me mean messages and mean texts. And I just couldn't afford to go to therapy 5 days a week, but I could go to these like free group therapy meetings. And so I just would start writing down things I heard there, or writing down things I heard in therapy, writing down things that helped me the most. And then I just, as a drawing warm up, would be like, what animal do I want to draw? Because I love drawing animals. And then I would just attribute whatever like highlights that were stuck in my head that had really helped me. I just attributed them to animals because everybody had to be anonymous.
Yeah. But it's brilliant.
Thanks.
It's still like, like I send these to my sister all the time. She's my soul sister, and she's in a lot of grief. Her mom was my therapist, and she actually died a few years ago.
Oh,
So I've been on this like grief journey with her, but she's back east. And she's a cat obsessed person. And so the anonymous fuzzball is just like, yes, they rock. Like they hit home, and it's light, but also like touching at the same time, because it's like, oh, but also like, oh, so cute. I love them.
oh, thanks. I really want to put out some kind of, I don't know what, a book, an intention card deck, something of them so that they just exist in a physical form.
Yeah.
That's
It'd be
my,
great to see them animated. I mean,
oh,
I'm a Persepolis style.
oh yeah.
I think I actually, when I first wrote to you, that your podcast and your drawings reminded me a lot of Linda Berry. And then of course, like a few weeks later, there was like Linda Berry on your pod or on your Instagram, and I was like, oh my God, I am such a dork. But like Cruddy years ago, like I already mentioned, someone gave me Rent Girl a long time ago, and I was like, oh my God, thank you. I really needed this. But Cruddy was given to me years later, and I was like, oh, everyone should read this. Absolutely. I still feel that way. But I had kind of forgotten it because it was so painful to read at the same time as I'm telling my friends who are in pain. I'm like, you should really read this book. It's amazing. So it didn't really surprise me to see her show up, but then it also was like delightful because I was like, oh my God, yes, of course. Is she like a mentor or just a teacher or a friend or?
I don't know, some combination. I've been such a fan of hers for so long. And then I would, but I think everybody is like, I would go to her drawing workshop and I've sent her my books. She's taught my books in her class.
Wow.
I go to her writing workshop and I really want to be teacher's pet, but every single person there is like a Linda Berry freakazoid who wants to be teacher's pet. And so I actually then have the opposite response where I want to give her space because I can understand like how intense it is to have this room of 75 people and we're all like like getting like just like wanting to like huff her and just like suck her energy. And so I actually then try to give her space because I just want it too bad. It's like snorkeling and seeing a sea turtle or something. It's like,
Yeah,
oh my God, like you want to like grab it and put it in your mouth, but you just don't give it space.
I totally could affirm that because I'm a tide pool docent. So I totally respect what you're saying. Like, leave it there, but
Do you just
admire it.
stand there and then you see people start to reach and you're like,
So I really have a hard time with boundaries like that. I'm just like, oh, they want to touch it. My sister-in-law and my wife are Greek and Italian. They're really into it. They're like, no, 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 teaching moment. And I'm just like looking at a dog running down the beach. I'm not good at it. I don't deserve to be a tide pool dose.
oh, that's not true. I wonder if I had like a little, maybe not a ruler, but like a pointing stick, I could smack people's hands with to be like, get away from that.
Back away from that hermit crab,
Yeah.
mister. Yeah, Linda Berry is incredible. And I just wanted to put that in there because yeah, it really comes through. Whatever it is, like your work also, it just has that kind of like that voice. You know, when I was reading Cruddy, I was imagining it in my mind. And I think I actually said too, I don't know if you read Persepolis
I
back in,
did.
remember, it was amazing. And then it was turned into like an animated film. And I got to meet Marjane Sartrapi back
Ooh.
in the day, and she was wonderful. But I was imagining relative fiction, like maybe like an animated, also.
I was trying to think of that too. And I've mentioned it to some Hollywood people because I also live in LA,
Right.
and no one's ever seen a fully animated documentary before. And so they're all like, oh, but that was kind of that was one of my goals in moving to LA
Mm-hmm.
was I wanted to make, so Calling Dr. Laura, the book preceded relative fiction. So that's why I keep kind of going back and forth.
Yeah.
But I wanted to make Calling Dr. Laura into a movie, but then everybody was trying to get it to be a TV show, but then they were trying to fictionalize it. And I was like, no. The point is that it's true.
It's your life.
The point is that it's stranger than fiction because it's true. And I just kept kind of like almost developing as a TV show and then being like, no. And then I was like, well, maybe this podcast will be some kind of proof of concept. Because for me, I could really see it as an animated thing. I think.
Definitely. Yeah. I absolutely see it that way. I know it's probably I think Marjane Sartrapi was saying like how time consuming that was for her to make it into it. And
Oh, really?
yeah, I kind of, it's been years, but I think it was after the movie or film came out, and whichever one you want to call it. And yeah, just like the labor and the love that goes into it. But I absolutely could see your story being animated because I was imagining it already in my mind. And also because there's a need for that. I think that totally could happen. And since it's a full moon, just putting that intention out there, you know, right now, please make this happen. Which is part of the reason why I wanted to do this interview with you, because we're kind of moving in this direction of having a transition, if you will, where we're having people come and talk about their queer death stories and their experiences. And so for your process, do you make playlists, or do you like there was a time period where I would watch things, excuse me, to like be really inspired. Like for some reason, the movie Rushmore for like probably Royal Tannenbaums too, like visually would put me in that kind of like,
They have beautiful soundtracks too.
oh yeah, totally.
Well, for my drawing practice and graphic novels and stuff, I have like my studio practice. I have a playlist. One of my friends gave me an iPod many years ago, like 12 years ago at least, or 10 years ago, because she saw me riding my bike with a Discman and she was like, I'm going to give you an iPod. And she gave it to me. This is before everyone had iPhones. And she gave it to me, and I could never figure out how to put my songs on it without erasing all of hers. So I just kept her songs.
Sure.
And I just listened to like the top 25 most played, which was the feature of the iPod at that time. And so it includes Kaya, my woman husband. It includes Elliott Smith, Queen, The Knife, some Eric Satie, and a little bit of Harry Belafonte, and I can't remember what else. But I know I have it on Spotify, which I know Spotify is like the devil, but I have it there too for times when I don't have my iPod, which now I can't even find things to plug it into because it's like so old. But I have a version of it on there that's public.
Oh, cool. That's good to know. I love that.
But if I listen to that and I put on my smock, then it tells my brain it's time to work.
I like that you have a smock. It just reminded me that when I was like a long time ago when I was a kid, I had a Snoopy smock.
Oh my
now
God.
I'm like, I wish I still had that, because I completely forgot about it until you used the word smock, and that came up in my little file in my brain.
my God, please do a writing exercise around your memory of smock, of the word smock.
I will. My homework assignment. I'm writing all this down.
Everybody listening, if this part doesn't get cut out, you
Oh,
have
it
to do
won't.
a writing assignment that's based in the style of Linda Berry about when you think of the word smock, the first image that comes to your mind, the first memory, I want you to quantum leap into it and just look around and write every single detail you can see and hear and smell and touch.
And
And then
just say
like,
the word smog.
yeah. And like what, I mean, that could be any, for some people, it could be like, oh, my, teacher at a ceramics class in high school or, whatever.
Yes. I actually really like those little assignments that sometimes you post. And that's why I think also I send them to my sister because like, she's going through grief and, sometimes it just like helps to have like, oh, someone else is kind of, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
it's cool. I really appreciate it. So I also am curious, do you listen at all to true crime? Because your podcast is kind of a mystery. Like you're listening, it's like really addictive. You're like, oh my God, now I have to know what's happening. And I know that that has to be intentional. It's not just, and I really appreciate the infrastructure to make it so da, 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 the big reveal. But was that inspired by a true crime, kind
I
of?
listened, I listened to a podcast. Claudia and I both at the beginning listened to a podcast called The Legend of Billy Balls, which is by a queer person named Io.
Okay.
Can't Io Tillett, right? I think. And that one, Claudia and I were already talking about the podcast, and then I listened to that. I can't remember who recommended it to me, but I was like, Claudia, you have to hear this. It's actually about this person's mom in the 80s who was like, kind of a wild ass as far as moms go, but was like a punk in the 80s and had this like punk boyfriend who got murdered. And it's kind of it's a true crime that involves his mother and kind of unravels this murder. Um, I listened to that and I listened to a little bit. I listened to this podcast called You Must Remember This, which is about the history of Hollywood, and the
Okay.
Manson family series of that was wonderful. It's like a 10-part series about the Manson family, which I don't really, I've had this like, I'm like, I don't care about old Hollywood. Who cares? Like whenever you see like Project Runway or Top Model or Drag Race, everyone's like, I'm channeling old Hollywood. I'm like, who cares about old Hollywood? But I really liked that podcast. And then I can't listen to too much because I get too scared, but I loved the audiobook for I'll Be Gone in the Dark.
Oh yeah. Michelle McNamara is one of my faves. Yes.
But I don't listen to very many true crime because it just gets in my head too much. And then I get scared. I'm alone often and my dog's not very formidable. And I can't like have this like women are going to get murdered kind of loop in my head all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like
true.
like after I listened to I'll Be Gone in the Dark, it was so hard for me to sleep. I was like, putting shit in front of the doors, like booby trapping my house. It was too much.
Yeah, and she died. I mean,
Yeah.
it was just like this really painful. I love her. I admire her so much. Also, I wish we could interview her. But, I asked that because so I'm working on a podcast now, which was inspired by you in part.
Ooh.
And by genre is ghost story, personal ghost stories. Because many, many, many years ago, when I was in my wild ass 20s, to quote you, a friend of mine started to tell me that he was a suspect in a murder in Baltimore.
Ooh.
And then pre-pandemic, my amazing wife and I are driving back from Joshua Tree, and she tells me, Baltimore's a very small community, by the way, telling me about a murder she knows about in Baltimore. And I'm like, I know about this, but I know it from the other side. She knew the victim's family. I knew the potential suspect, or one of them, who also was queer and is now dead. So after listening to Relative Fiction, I was like, this would be the time that I feel like the most like inspired to tell this story, because I spent an entire year of investigating and interviewing people, like 50 or more people from Baltimore about this story, and got kind of nowhere with it. So I kind of feel like your story is a little bit like on the fringes of true crime, even though it's not necessarily a true crime situation. It's just kind of like a mystery, you know. So I was like, I wonder if she, yeah, like, but I understand like it gets a little bit creepy, you know, like I don't like to sensationalize other people's pain, for example. I'm just more curious about like how it impacts people. And so I'm just putting that out there. If you ever want to tell me a ghost story, I'm also kind of collecting ghost stories from people.
Hmm.
Which could be like a ghost story, like, woo, you know, like haunted mansion, or it could just be like, this weird thing happened, you know,
Hmm.
or like sometimes when I put that out there to people recently, they're like, well, there was this person who died, you know, mysteriously when I was blah, blah, blah. Um, but I guess I'm just also like, I don't want to keep you too much longer because I know that your dinner is being made. And so I guess I'm just curious, like, what is your take on, because you kind of ended up, maybe listeners need to hear this, that you went to the psychic and they gave you this unexpected news. And I think many of us go to the psychic kind of casually, like, you know, but they were so wrong about everything else about you, and then they gave you this like, you know, news about your dad. Do you still feel like you could go to a psychic today in like 2021 and just be like, whatever, you know?
No, I
No.
felt, well, I don't know. I've been seeing Jessica and Yato for years. After that palm reading, I was kind of shell shocked, or I just was, it was just so emotionally overwhelming for somebody to say, oh, this person you thought was dead your whole life is alive.
Right, of
And
course.
you should talk to him. I just like that was too much. Like it blew the doors off my reality. And so for a long time, I was still just kind of trying, the doors of my reality was kind of still flopping back and forth. And I just wasn't willing to have somebody tell me new, astounding information about my family that maybe I just didn't want to know. But Jessica, I met socially. And so then I started seeing her because I just liked the cut of her jib.
Hmm.
I just liked her. And so I have seen her, but I don't think, I don't know. I would think about it, but I kind of, I don't know. Like I've thought
Yeah.
about going to see the Oracle of LA, or I went to see some guy named Paul at some wizard shop who, but, it's hard because I feel like now I'm a little too malleable or something.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty, you know, that's pretty shocking that
Yeah.
when you talk to most people that have, you know, just casually gone to a palm reader or a psychic, they're not expecting their entire life to be, you know, changed. Or maybe some people are, obviously, but yeah, that's
But not like that.
no. And the fact that she was so off about everything else about, I think you both, you know, your ex and you, right? You're
Yeah.
predicting all these things for you, and then this one thing was accurate. I mean, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, I can't tell. I don't know how much I would, you know, dabble in the arts
Understandably.
anymore.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the questions that I was sort of like, just out of like human curiosity, like, how do you move, you know, about that again? Like, because they're everywhere, palm readers, psychics, you know, it's like life changing. Um,
But then it's also a thing, it's like, it was like a gut, it was just a gut reaction to what that person said. So, I would tell people if they're going to a palm reader and they say something wild like that, somebody who doesn't know you. I mean, for me, it resounded in my kind of gut intuition feeling of like, oh no, this thing is true.
right. Yeah.
So it's like an opportunity to listen to yourself about what you're hearing.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, if I may, like that's kind of again, like listening to you tell your story, it's like you really have listened to yourself. You're just speaking your truth, and you've really listened to yourself. And I think that, like in the beginning of our conversation, you're saying if it could help anyone else, aside from all like the smoke and mirrors of like a palm reader or psychic, or it's like yeah, that gut, that inner knower. That's what my therapist used to say, like listen to your inner knower. Don't should yourself, which is too messy, like I've always seen things that she would say to me, but it's true. It's like it's really good advice, and also probably like how we heal like ourselves. um so I appreciate that, you know because I know like everyone wants to know like what your mom thinks, but really, like for me it's just kind of like, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a mom, and maybe it's because I don't think I'm that much older than you, but like I just felt so like protective. I'm like, oh my God, this is just, it's your experience, it's your life, and you're really putting yourself out there. And so I had just, have tremendous respect for you, and your courage,
Thank
really.
you.
Which is funny because like you just told me like how you're, you and Ponyo are not brave. And I'm like, but I think of you as really brave. I mean, I know that crazy shit with serial killers and stuff, yes, of course, is terrifying. But yeah, I think like you're really brave, and really inspiring. So that's why you're one of my queer icons, and you just have to deal with that. You just have to accept that.
Well, I do not want to let you down.
You won't.
That's okay.
No, I don't think you can, because you're just yourself.
Okay.
And so
Yeah.
it's not like you said earlier about like we're not like hitting those benchmarks of like this perfect person. It's more like, wow, this real person who has navigated all of this, and turned it into something really special. And I just want everyone to know about it. And so thank you so much for being willing to come here, having never met me or knowing anything about me, really. It really means a lot.
Oh, you're so welcome. And thank you for asking me.
Absolutely. So if you ever do think of any ghost stories that you would like to tell me, I would love to hear them. I'm just planting a seed, just like the animation of relative fiction, planting that on this full moon in Aquarius. And I took a lot of notes. So just want to like say thanks from my entire family. Really.
Oh, well, thank you, entire family, for listening to the podcast. We worked so hard on it. I'm happy to hear like my message in a bottle reached you.
Yeah, it did. It does. I think about it probably every day.
Oh,
Like
wow.
in some way or the, it's just kind of like it's one of those things that I'm like, yeah, it really moved me. And so I wish you, all the best, and Ponyo, and I can't wait to see what happens next for you.
Thank you so much. No, I'm knocking on wood.
I know. Me too.
Well, thank you for having me. And if I think of a ghost story, I'll tell you. I can't think of any off the top of my head.
Okay. I know it's like a lot of pressure, like ta-da, like
Well,
yeah.
some people have them. I know, I don't know what her schedule's like, but if you ever reach out to Michelle T on Instagram or something, I know she has ghost stories.
Okay, I will. Yeah. Yeah, I'm connected with her there. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm always interested. So, and who knows? Maybe I'll see you again. I don't know. Like, I'm putting that out there in the universe.
Wonderful.
Thank
Well,
you.
I would love that. And, maybe the pandemic will open and who knows?
Exactly. Okay.
All right. Well, stay safe in Orange County.
Thank you. We're trying. We're trying.
Oh my God.
And
Start carry Lysol and just spray those senior citizens without masks, like my parents, just away.
yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no offense to senior citizens, but the unmasked
I know.
Trumpians of all ages.
Yes.
I'm ready to Lysol away from me, including my own parents.
They're out there.
Yeah.
And they've got it coming. So I just tell them I work in the death industry, and it usually keeps people like very far away from me. They're like, oh, like Grim Reaper.
You have your sickle and you're like, come.
I'm like, oh, I'll be seeing you. Yeah, that's kind of.
I'll see you soon.
That's how I show up on Twitter most of the time when people Twitter battles. I'm like, well, I work in death, so.
I'll save you a spot.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I hope you enjoy your dinner and the rest of your evening. And till next time.
Till next time.
Thank
Nice
you
to
so
be in
much.
touch with you and to meet you.
You too. Take good care. I really enjoy talking to you.
Me too. Bye.
Bye.